Good evening. I'd like to call our meeting to order. I'm Richard Wazansky, Chair of the Guilford Select Board, and I'd like to welcome you to the Guilford Select Board Public Informational Meeting. I'm joined by my colleagues on the Select Board, Veranda Porch, Zon Eastis, Michael Becker, and Rusty Marine. I'd like to read to you the rules of procedure which govern how we relate to each other during this meeting. The basic premises of our interactions are civility and being patient and waiting for folks to finish what they have to say and raising your hand when you want to say something. The official rules are as follows. This meeting is being streamed live to Comcast channel 1085, YouTube and Facebook at Brattleboro Community TV. BCTV's coverage of the meeting is made possible by these sponsors. How do we participate in the meeting? Please turn off your video and mute your microphone. If joining by phone, use 6 to mute and unmute. Make sure your name is displayed correctly. Use the rename feature under participants or hover over the blue square on your video. The renaming function is that if for instance, your name comes up as your telephone number, we'd like you to change that to what your name is, what your real name is, not your telephone number. And you do that by using rename under participants or hover over the blue square on your video. If you wish to speak, use the raise hand feature under reactions or participants. If joining by phone, use 9 to raise or lower your hand. Star 9, thank you, Rick. Use star 9 to raise or lower your hand. The chat will not be monitored for questions or comments on agenda items. Use raise hand to participate. The moderator, and our moderator tonight is Rick Zamore, who is the town moderator, will call your name or your phone number if you're joining by phone to speak. BCTV will ask you to turn on your video and unmute your microphone. Please identify yourself and your street or neighborhood. After you're done speaking, please stop your video and mute your microphone. As each agenda item is completed, I will ask the director to lower all hands, or Rick will, to start the line for the next agenda item. I'd like to ask, those are the rules of procedure. I'd like to ask if there are any changes to the agenda. I don't know that there's a hand raised.
No changes from me, Richard.
Oh, okay, thank you. Announcements. We do have announcements, and I wanted to just remind our residents about the process of the Australian ballot. And here are some important facts that you need to know about the Australian ballot. The town will vote by Australian ballot on the articles in the town meeting warning at the Broadbrook Community Center, the Grange, on March 2nd, 2021, or by mail absentee ballot. Voting at the Grange will be from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. The Australian ballot means that we will use pre-printed ballots to vote, yes or no, on all articles presented to the town by the select board and on the candidates running for office. Residents may request a ballot from the town clerk in person, online, by phone, by mail, or by email to the following address: M as in Michael, V as in Victory, P as in Peter, .vermont.gov. Voters may vote in person at the Broadbrook Community Center, the Grange, on March 2nd, or by early absentee voting. Ballots are available to be picked up now at the town office for early absentee voting. Early voting and absentee ballots may be dropped off or mailed to the town office. Due to the COVID prevention goal of reducing the number of voters voting in person at the polling place, residents are encouraged to vote early. And so those are facts, and those facts about the Australian ballot are also on a postcard that has been mailed to every resident in town. I know that Kathy Wilkin has an announcement about a correction in the town report. Are you there, Kathy? I see Kathy has her hand raised.
Your hands up. Can you turn on your video, Kathy?
I will. Maybe.
You're
Start
on.
My video. Oh, there we go. Usually the first thing we do after electing the moderator is to accept the town report, and I give a little um, summary of the mistakes we have made. And I'm happy to report that we only made one real mistake, but it was a doozy. We left out the name of Georgia Gale York, who was born in March, almost a year ago. And her parents were Margaret and Jocelyn York. And they were very unhappy about not being in the town report. And I didn't blame them. I wanted to make sure that everyone knows that Georgia was born. Besides, I can't figure out how we forgot her because she comes to story time every week.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to move on to each of our articles that we find in the town warning.
Richard, can I interrupt for 1 second?
Mhm.
Is that Sean Murphy who has his hand raised?
Yes, thank you. It's just that I have a little sign that says host has stopped your video, so I cannot start my video.
No, we will start it for you. The BCTV will turn it on for you.
Okay.
That's important. Everyone should know that BCTV has turned off all videos. And when you're called on, when your hand is raised and you're called on, they will turn on your video.
And I would like to turn over the meeting to our distinguished town moderator, Rick Zamor.
Well, okay. I thought we were going to jump right into the articles, but welcome everybody. As Richard said, this is the Warren Town meeting. It's a legal requirement under the temporary law governing the Australian ballot town meetings this year. We ask that you identify yourself when you're called on and to make a question or comment. And of course, be civil and concise, and we'll have a good meeting. We had a great meeting last week, and I think we will again tonight. I think that is all I need to say because Richard has gone over the protocols. Once again, it's *6 to unmute yourself if you're on the phone, and *9 to raise your hand. And if *9, I can see you in the queue, and I can call on you if you're on the phone. And I think that's all I need to say at the moment, and we'll begin with the articles. Article 1.
All right, good evening. My name is Zahn Eastis. I'm a select board member. Article 1, shall the town vote to approve highway fund expenditures in the amount of $973,457 for the fiscal year July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022, for which revenues will be raised through taxes and other sources. And I just have a note to say that it's pretty much the same as it was in last year's budget, but due to the retirement of one person and a few budget cuts because of COVID, there's an overall budget reduction of $47,454.
Okay. Any questions or comments on Article 1? Seeing none, we will go to Article 2.
I'm Richard Wazansky, the chair of the Guilford Select Board, and I live on Packer Corners Road. Article 2, shall the town vote to approve general fund expenditures in the amount of $838,215 for the fiscal year July 1, 2021 to June 30th, 2022, for which revenues will be raised through taxes and other sources. I can just make a comment on that. The new fiscal year expense budget reflects a strategy to draw on savings to cover selected expenses generally paid for by tax revenues. These savings are reflected in the commission budgets, which are 50% this year funded with each commission's reserve funds, as well as savings garnered by moving funds from the town's general reserve fund to other town reserve funds to reduce the amount raised by taxes in the coming fiscal year, and that reduction in taxes is 12%. I'd also like to shout out to the Fiscal Financial Advisory Committee, which is led brilliantly by Sheila Morse, and they have been a great help in terms of the analysis and the creation and the development of our budget for the new fiscal year.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments about Article 2? Seeing none, we'll go to Article 3.
Okay, I'm Rusty Marine. I'm a select board member. I live on Bonneville Road. And Article 3 is this. Shall the town vote to continue membership in the Wyndham Regional Commission and raise and appropriate the sum of $5,121 to defray the town share of this expense? It's a small increase of $80 this year. And just a little FYI, the Wyndham Regional Commission provides services such as consulting, planning, and also grant compliance.
Are there any questions or comments? No? Okay. Moving on to Article 4.
Hello, I'm Zon Eastis again. I forgot to say that I live on Yale Road earlier. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $6,363 for Southeastern Vermont Economic Development Strategies, or SEVEDS? And the comments are that this is the same amount as last year, and SEVEDS was funded last year at the amount requested. There are also representatives here on the meeting if they're, who can answer questions.
Are there any questions for SEVEDS or comments? Okay. You can ask questions again later if you need to. It's better to ask them now, while the article's on the floor. But I think people will be here throughout the meeting. Article 5.
Okay, I'm Veranda Push. I'm Vice Chair of the Select Board, and I live on the Packer Corners Road. Article 5. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $6,000 for Guilford Cares? And they're on the warning. This is the third year that, and final year, that they'll be on the warning. Their old request was for $48,000 and their new one is $6,000. They provided 62 house visits, 26 medical items, and visited 109 households, 791 visits, and 1,089 people in Guilford served, all told.
Veranda, I would just correct that. That should be $4,800, not $48,000.
Oh, did I say 48,000? Oh dear, that was absolutely wrong. 4,800, wrong comma. Thank you, Peter.
Those were the good old days for Guilford Cares.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments about Guilford Cares? They are there when you need them. Okay, Article 6.
Okay, this is Rusty Marine again. Article 6 is, shall the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $238,450 for the Guilford Volunteer Fire Department? Last year, the Guilford Fire Department went on a total of 231 incident calls, including 105 medical emergencies and 30 mutual aid calls. Any questions?
Is there any comment? Okay, I see Beth has got her hand raised. Beth Bristol. Oh, Jared.
Hello, good evening.
Hi, Jared.
Bristol here, Fire Chief, live on Lowry Road, Guilford here. Just wanted to give a quick hi to everybody. Thanks for everybody, what they've done, especially the select board and the special committees this year of all years. It's been a challenging year for everybody and also for us at the station. The number of calls hasn't gone down, and the detail in the calls has gone up. We did a little blurt in the town report on how detailed our calls get now, with cleaning things after calls, to very, very in depth, more than we've done in the past. Anyways, we're level funded again this year. We got a lot of things going on, trying to keep everybody's morale up, trying to keep the interest up, because we're unable to train for a while. We've been unable to do any fundraising, but this town came through again. We've had huge support for donations and things. We appreciate it, and we hopefully can get back to norm next year, or this year, the end of this year, hopefully. But yep, if anybody's got any questions, let me know. Thanks.
Thanks, Jared. Good to hear from you. Are there any questions for Jared? All right, hearing none, we will go on to Article 7.
Hi, this is Michael Becker. I'm a Guilford Select Board member, live on Stage Road in Green River Village. And I'll read Article 7. Article 7, the Guilford Volunteer Fire Department Capital Fund. This was requested Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $35,000 for the Guilford Volunteer Fire Department Capital Improvements Fund? And I do have a couple of notes on that. This was first requested last year, and it is not part of their annual appropriations. The select board decided to keep it separate and within the town's accounts until requested. Any questions?
People, it's your only time to ask questions before you vote yes or no. Okay, seeing none, we will go to Article 8.
Okay, Article 8. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $15,880 for the following human service organizations? Youth Services, $1,605. Women's Freedom Center, $1,000. Groundworks Collaborative, $1,000. Visiting Nurse and Hospice for Vermont and New Hampshire, $6,300. Retired Senior Volunteer Program, RSVP, $485. Senior Solutions, $850. Brattleboro Area Hospice, $300. Gathering Place, $500. Brattleboro Senior Meals, $350. Early Education Services, $850. AIDS Project of Southern Vermont, $350. The Mover, Connecticut River Transit, $250. And SEVCA for $2,040. So that adds up to $15,880, and that's level funded from last year.
Thank you, Veranda. Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, we will go to Article 9.
Okay, this is Michael Becker again. Article 9, shall the town collect its taxes through the treasurer without discount? Interest at 1% or fraction thereof will be charged after October 15th.
Any questions?
And the only comment I'll make is that that's what it was the year before and the year before that. It's
Linda or Steve Lemke? You'll need to unmute yourself, and there you go, you're ready.
Hi, it's Steve Lemke from River Road. This is a general question on all the budget items for Richard or Peter, and it's sort of speculative. It's related to if the COVID relief package goes through Congress and states and towns get money, has the town received any money from the COVID relief side of things? And do you anticipate getting some if this bill goes through, and sort of gradually, if so, is there a planned place to put it?
Peter, would you like to speak to that?
I'd be happy to. So to answer one of your questions, Steve, yes, the town did receive some funds from the first round, approximately $1,700 to cover some COVID expenses that we did not normally have. Regarding your second question, that's really unknown. It's a big question, and should we get any funding, it'll be up to the select board to decide how to use that. We have not had a huge number of expenses that have been outside of the budget that would qualify for at least the previous funding. If the federal government were to change their requirements to receive that funding, that might be a different story, but we really won't know until we get more information on it.
Okay, thanks.
That answer your question, Steve?
Yes, very well.
Thank you, Peter. Any other questions? All right, moving on to Article 10.
I will also be reading Article 10, Michael Becker. Article 10, shall the voters of the town of Guilford authorize the town to withdraw from the Wyndham Southeast School District? And we do have representatives from the district who are here to answer questions this evening.
Does anyone have a comment or a question?
I think we were going to go on to Article 11 and,
Do them.
and have people speak to them both.
Thank you, Miranda.
Okay. Article 11. Oh, could somebody else read it? I seem to have a
Yes, I'll
phone.
read it. Article 11, this is Richard Wazansky from Packer Corners Road. Shall the voters of the town of Guilford conditionally approve and ratify the withdrawal of the towns of Brattleboro, Dummerston, and or Putney from the Wyndham Southeast School District, subject to the certification of results from the respective town votes to withdraw on March 2nd, 2021. And we do have representatives here from the WSESD to answer questions or make comments.
Thank you, Richard. Does anyone want to speak to this? Yes, we have Sean Murphy.
Yes. Oops, I still don't have a video for some reason. Oh, maybe I have to start my video. There we go. Yeah, okay, thank you. I noticed that Andy and Frank, the superintendent and the CFO of the WSESD are here. And I could give a little introduction. Basically, what I said at pre-town meeting is that there are pretty significant financial implications as well as staff implications if a small town such as Guilford does leave the WSESD. And that could be substantiated, I think, probably most clearly, the financial part of it by Frank Rucker. And maybe Andy would also like to contribute. Thank you.
Okay, Andy Skarzinski.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. Let me first off start by saying what a pleasure it is to be in this meeting this evening. And as a new superintendent to the region, just how incredible it is to see the level of public participation and the select board and the Board of Ed meetings. It's absolutely astounding to have this level of involvement. So there's some questions as to why this might be on the town ballot and not the school ballot, and that's because under Vermont statute, the statute 16 VSA 724 refers to this being a town initiative. And so what the ballot essentially is a conditional, the Board of Ed made a motion back January 5th at that meeting to see if they could put forth an article on the school ballot if there was, if the voters of the districts, the 4 towns wanted to withdraw and approve the exit of the other remaining districts. The second motion that was passed was if it was not in the board's purview to do that work, they would ask the select boards to move that motion forward. So this is a statute, it's a conditional part 1, the town has to vote to withdraw from the WSESD, the four town merged district. And then the second vote, Article 11, refers to the conditional approval of the other towns to withdraw from the unified district if those residents should do so in their own town to vote to withdraw. So the process is all outlined in statute. The result would be if all 4 districts were, if the SD, the school district, were to be dissolved, it would result in 4 independent districts. Towns without a public high school would still have to provide for their children's secondary education. Mostly that would be through tuitioning students to a secondary school of their choice or an approved independent school within the state of Vermont, or in some towns close to the border. Frank can probably talk a little bit more about the budgetary implications, for those things. There were some questions that we've typically heard regarding the vote. There was some wondering as far as would this result in the former BU6 merged high school district reforming, that the State Board of Education does not have the authority to reform that merged high school district, although there is a pathway to doing so in statute. It would just take a couple of years. In the interim, students would be allowed to select the high school that they'd like to attend, and the districts would be paying the tuition for that. It's a little bit of a difference financially between the districts. Frank can talk a little bit more about the implications with, if people would like to know, regarding the expenses at the elementary school. Again, happy to answer questions as well.
Rick, should I proceed on the financial overview, or?
Sure. Well, and then people can ask either of you questions.
Very good. And I want to echo Andy's comments about having us join the meeting. And I also have a great deal of respect for the current and former school board members I've worked with over the years from Guilford. It's just been a great community to work with. Rick, I'm not sure if you're the host, but I think if I could share my screen, it would help facilitate. Is that all an option?
Yeah, BCTV can make you a host, I believe. I can't do it. Or Richard, can you do that, or
I think Cora is on the line. Cora is with us.
Looks like that's been enabled. It appears that I can do that now. So I will. Good. I will. They're also top notch. So here we go. So if I could give you a little context. First of all, this data is on the Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union website. I'll go pretty quickly and I'll be pretty brief, and then happy to expand on anything if folks would like some clarification. I thought I would start by just noting that here we are with our 2,200 students as a unified system. Just to give you some context, and Guilford is within this. Here's the Guilford statistics for enrollment, and we have been fairly flat, and this down year reflected when Vernon withdrew from the union. With that aside, we've had this 2,200 student enrollment base. Excuse me. The other sort of context I wanted to share is here's the fiscal year 22 projected unified budget, the Windham Southeast School District unified budget, $1.70. And I think it's important to note how that this is the lowest tax rate that has been projected for the region in the last 7 budget periods. See, this $1.70 is lower than all prior years. The Windham Southeast School District was formed in fiscal year 2020 by the State Board of Education. And you see, prior to that, we're comparing these average tax rates to the equivalent of a unified system. This is important to note that this is the homestead and it is the equalized tax rates. As you know, each town's tax assessments vary depending on when they get reappraised and what's going on in a particular town's real estate market. But these are equalized so that we're taking that component out of the picture. So $1.70, maybe just keep that number in mind for a moment. The next context in terms of understanding the impact to Guilford if we had a dissolution of the unified school. What we've done is this is the actual proposed budget of 52 million as a unified system. In order to get to a tax rate, we need to identify revenues we don't need from the education fund. So this is 8 million primarily in tuitions that come in to the UHS campus. So 52 million in proposed spending, 8 million in revenues. We divide the difference between spending and revenues by our students, and that's how we develop a tax rate. So what we've done is we've taken these 3 key statistics that are used to develop a tax rate, and we said, well, okay, if we dissolved using the proposed budget, what would Guilford look like? If you go to your annual report, you can see in the proposed budget, right, distinctly for the Guilford school site, 2,224,000. And then we've taken the allocation for special education services, transportation, and those other things that are not charged directly. They're called district-wide programs. And we've identified Guilford's share as this would be a pre-K through 6 school, and their share of the special ed costs and so on, for a $2.6 million budget out of this $52 million. We identify the revenues that are specific to the Guilford school site, and this hypothetical if the school withdrew from the union. So we take our 2.6 million minus a couple 100,000 in revenues, and then we divide by our students, 124 kids, and everything is tied back to actual proposed budgets. In this case, 52 million is an actual proposed budget to be voted on March 2nd. And those are actual revenues that have been estimated, and those are actual kids. So we feel pretty confident that using these statistics, we can get to a financial impact for every town if we dissolved. Now, there's a lot of legal questions I would have to come back to. I won't cover them now, that raise the question whether this is actually a legal process. But the Finance Committee and the Communications Committee asked me to do the best I could to look at a hypothetical scenario if we reverted back to the former district structures. So this is how we get to a tax rate. I just mentioned the 2,000,006. I just mentioned the 193. And then there's that 124 kids for Guilford. And when you just follow the funding formula, we take the 2.5 million divided by the kids, and we get $20,000 per student. All schools across the state do the same process to develop a local homestead tax rate. We compare it to what the legislature sets as a number if a community approves a budget beyond the number that they set. It's called a excess spending threshold, then a penalty is assessed. And under the proposed budget, if we split the unified union into separate parts, it creates this mathematical result that increases the cost per student from $19,391 to $21,500. And that would be an 11% increase for the Guilford school if it was separate. And this is assuming that we're still spending the same amount of money. It's just the way the school funding formula is designed. It is designed to favor systems of larger than 900 students. That was part of Act 46. And the theory there is, there's a lot of theory, but from a financial point of view, it's the ability to share resources and increase the utilization of every aspect of operating a school is much higher when we get into class sizes of 20 to 30 students per grade level. And then in our larger elementary schools, we have two sectors of those. In academy school, we have 3 third grade teachers. A larger system allows the single employer, and that's the one of the key issues, a single employer to share staff, to smooth out the variations from enrollment. Really is what drives everything, is our students, and of course how many students we have, and then their needs. But here's the mathematical impact. The balance of this analysis goes into a question that is, we've learned subsequent to me doing this analysis, that it's certainly unlikely that at the secondary level, so now we're talking grades 7 through 12, that Brattleboro Union High School would not be reformed. I used the hypothetical analysis as if it would have been reformed, just so that I met the committee's request, which is give us an analysis of what it looks like prior to the merger. And if that happened, then we just talked about the elementary tax rate, $1.89. And now we've got to talk about, well, what about paying for 7 through 12 Guilford students? Well, in the old ways, which is still in effect in terms of the school funding formula, you take your secondary costs. I've done the same thing for Brattleboro Union High School. I took, what is their spending? What is their revenue? How many kids would they have? You divide that in by this funding formula, you get a tax rate. And in this scenario, about half of the kids, 54%, would be subject to this higher tax rate of $1.89. And then the balance, this 46%, would be subject to the lower tax rate, $1.63. And this is a hypothetical Union High School being reformed. So when you take the weighted average of those two tax rates and you put them together, it's a 3.9 average increase. But I wanted to highlight a couple of things. One is we've learned that Andy may have already mentioned this, but the State Board of Education does not have the authority to reconstitute a union high school. So there would be, if towns withdrew and the SD was dissolved, there would be an interim period where there is no there is no public high school as it existed prior. If the union was dissolved, the default would be, it would become the Brattleboro High School, and Guilford would tuition students to the Brattleboro High School or to an independent school. And it wouldn't be until a new board is formed at the Guilford district level and go through the legal process to either designate a secondary high school or do what Vernon did, which is just remain choice. So that's one caveat with this analysis. And then the other is just to illustrate one reason why the State Board of Ed and the legislature came to the conclusion that small schools like Guilford will be able to sustain educational programs much better if they are part of a unified system, is because of the way in which, as enrollment changes, so here's our 124 number enrollment, it's actually overstated by quite a bit, and the reason for that is because of the pandemic. The legislature said, we know there's a lot of volatility in enrollment, and we're just going to freeze the number. So one last point, and that is if we put in the real number, which is closer to 115 equalized students, I know we have more than 115 kids at Guilford, but the state only counts our pre-K kids as a 0.46, part of the funding formula. It would bring this number close to 115. And just that 9 or 10 student difference would drive this tax rate in Guilford up from 11% to closer to 30%. And the reason for that is if you're spending the same amount of money and you drop out 10 kids, your cost per student is going to be going toward $23,000, $24,000 per student. And then that you divide that by what the state sets as something called an equalized yield, and there's your tax rate. And that's the problem that so many small schools face, Guilford's face, that you're back to what programs can we cut in order to get back down to somewhere around $18,000 a student as opposed to these figures. So unfortunately, nothing unique. Actually, Guilford's probably one of the more favorable outlooks. The town of Dummerston is much worse than this. Brattleboro does have, if they split off, they have a tax increase as well, as does Putney. So when you break things apart, even if you're spending the same amount of money, you're going to have higher tax rates because of the way the math is designed in the school funding formula. So glad to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Frank. Questions and comments? Sean Murphy.
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering whether it might behoove Frank to go over a little bit about the debt service and the advantage that a unified district gets if they have a debt service. They can sometimes squeak under the cap if they can use that debt service. So I think Frank can probably explain it a lot better than I can.
Thanks for highlighting that, Sean. It's a good point. Coming back to this document that we have on the web page, I didn't want to go into too much detail, but it is a very important point that you're making, Sean. So in this analysis, again, here we are in Guilford, and I left the document that's in the annual report, and it's going to be in front of our voters town meeting, the 52,103,000. This is the actual budget proposal, and here's the Guilford scenario, hypothetical scenario. And as Sean's pointing out, here we are with 52 million minus 8 is 43 million. You divide 43 by 2,200 kids and you get 19,000. That number is bigger than the threshold. But Sean's making a very important point that the state says, oh, well, we're not going to penalize a school for investing in capital infrastructure and making sure we have a safe and healthy learning environment. And the Wyndham Southeast School District, which Guilford obviously is part of, all enjoy the benefit of the funding formula law that says, well, if you're paying on debt, and in the Brattleboro Union High School debt was years ago, was about 30 million. It's about almost $2 million a year in principal and interest. Well, if you divide that by the 2,000 kids, you're down to around $700 per kid, and they're saying, well, that you're exempt from any penalty. So Sean's point is this line right here. You see, even though we're spending more, when you take away the debt, we're under the 18.7 threshold, and therefore there is no penalty. So that in itself, if Guilford became a separate entity, that in itself says you're walking away from a shield that's built in to the funding formula that says you're walking away from that, essentially a credit against your tax bill, and you are inheriting that liability and then doubling it, because that's the way the penalty works. Every dollar a school district spends over the threshold, it's doubled. You see, it's added back to the number that you're already proposing. See, so 20,000 is already $1,300 over that. So they're taking your 20,000 and then they're saying, okay, and now we're going to tax you again on that. So it's 1,386 plus the 20. And that's again where, even though we're still spending 2.6 million in this scenario, we're being taxed at a much higher level. And this is part of the state's recognition that the grand list in the state of Vermont and the income level and the resources available have limits in terms of funding public education. And they set this threshold to encourage communities to not spend beyond that, because in their view, they're saying it's taking away resources from commerce and human services and other state agencies. So thanks for raising that question, Sean.
Okay, any questions or comments on these two articles, 10 and 11? Ann Ryder.
Hi, everybody. Andy, thank you for being here. Frank, thanks for that really good explanation. I am just once again struck by, frankly, the irresponsibility of the school board in putting these two articles forth without really even having the answers to the questions that were raised by this. Your explanation, Frank, somebody told me it was fear-mongering to predict the effect on the budget, and yet you showed us clear, cold, hard facts about why this would be financially really bad initially, and then go from there to disastrous for Guilford. So I'm disappointed in our school board. Thank you, Sean, for voting against the motion to have these articles put on the warning. I have been pretty clear about my feelings. I think this is really bad financially. I think it's bad for our students in terms of the opportunities they would receive or they would no longer receive if we were separated out. And the only thing that I've been able to understand about why this was proposed is that there are people who miss the coziness of a small school board. And I get that. I think that the advisory councils that Guilford's done such a great job, I'm not sure about the other schools, can take that place and can represent and have the close contact with the individual schools, and from there share what they get with the larger school board. But there are many reasons why I think this is a bad idea. I'm so distressed that this was sort of dumped on us so quickly with so little time to prepare and educate people. So thank you for your really good job of explaining some of the ramifications, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Ann. Michael Becker. You are muted.
Yeah. Hi, this is Michael Becker. I'm just speaking to you as a parent now of 2 students in the system, not as a select board member. You said that there are some legal questions and you chose to not talk about them, but I'd like to know what they are.
So, Michael, I can address a few of those. In the statute itself, so 16 VSA 724, I referenced, that's the statute. And I'm sorry if I'm engaging in the edu-speak. Essentially, the statute that pertains to withdrawal doesn't really contemplate the breakup or dissolution of a forced merger. So it's very clear in the statute that the language pertains to districts that voted to agree to merge or basically voted to merge. The WSESD is not a district that had agreed to merge. And so there's some kind of questionable status as to would this be a legally binding vote anyways? That information came to us late through the process. Our attorney had informed us that this was uncharted territory to begin with. As we've said in the statute guides the process. And so the next step after the certification of results is that it would go to the Secretary of Education, who would convey the results and the information to the State Board of Education. They would rule upon that. There has not been a case in which they've ruled upon a forced mergers withdrawal. And so there's a question there, related to that. The second question goes into the role of high school or secondary school choice for students and the powers that would be granted to a transitional board before they were to assume full authority over a district. So in the interim period between an approval, if everything went according to the pace that it should, if the State Board of Education ruled in the favor of the voters and they broke up the merged district, there is some question as to what would those powers be to a newly formed transitional board before they officially took office. They would be voted and elected upon, but mostly for just operational concerns and settling debt. But that would be determined by the State Board of Ed, but it wouldn't really allow for those groups to say, let's form a union high school again and go through that whole process, which is again identified in statute, nor would it really allow the districts to say, let's put forth a vote to our electorate around designating 1, 2, or 3 institutions for secondary schooling. So those are the 2 big legal hangups that we see right now. And those are things that are still questionable. I will say that the attorney for the Agency of Education indicated that she felt like this would not be a legally binding vote, and our counsel indicated the same.
Okay, thank you. That was Andy Skarzinski, just for the record. Veranda Port.
Oh, hi. I'm not speaking as a select board member now, but as somebody who's been involved with Guilford School as an artist in residence for a long time, and also has sat in on a bunch of leadership advisory council meetings. And one of the things that is really strange to me about this is that nobody has come forward to speak in favor of these articles, not in public prints, not really in our town, bringing it forward. The most that they've said is that we should have a chance to vote on it, but nobody has spoken of any advantage. And that's just, peculiar. I'm not asking any of the district people to do that, but if there is anybody in our town who's at this meeting who thinks it's a good idea, I wish they would just say something about it.
Thank you, Veranda. Does anyone want to speak in favor of the articles? Sean, hold on 1 second. Let's see if anyone else wants to speak. Okay, not seeing anyone. Sean, do you want to say something else? And Steve or Linda Lemke? Whoever comes on first. Sean had his hand up, but I don't see it now. So Steve or Linda, you're on.
Hi, it's Steve Lemke from River Road. I have a question about alternative plans. If I remember correctly, if a town wasn't part of a union, it was, if I remember correctly, it was required to come up with an alternative plan of how the students would be served. A, is that correct? Is my memory correct? And B, if it is correct and the town voted to get out of the union, would it be required to come up with an alternative plan again?
Steve, I can address that. This is Frank Rucker again. And by the way, Steve, it's been a little while since we've met, right? But you're the same Steve Lemke. Okay.
That's right.
Nice to see you again. Yes, you're recalling that correct. And that was part of Act 46. So this alternative governance structure was part of Act 46's law. And the way in which the process formed was a study committee according to Title 16, I think it's Section 706. And that's the section of the law that says this is the way you form a union school district. The study committee made recommendations to the State Board of Ed to merge, but there was a group, a subgroup within the study community subcommittees that said, well, we think that there is a viable alternative governance structure that would meet the criteria of Act 46. That was presented to the State Board of Ed, and the State Board of Ed essentially said that it actually did not meet the criteria. And essentially the arguments, many of the arguments, you can see the report from the Secretary of Education that basically said, it sort of underscored that many of the objectives of the alternative governance structure were actually better served through a unified union system. So that's almost a quote from the report. You could see these reports June of 2018 and November 28th of 2018 as well, I believe, and those are on the state's website. So that was Act 46. I actually have a similar question as to are those requirements in terms of the number of students, minimum number of students required, still in existence of Act 46, because as you know, well, maybe you didn't know, but the law required a 900 student minimum system in order to be considered a viable entity that complies with Act 46. So obviously, if there's no combination, Guilford, Putney, and Dummerston, no combination without Brattleboro forms a 900 student system. So I don't know if we've got a definitive answer to that question, but I don't believe that there is still a provision for the State Board of Ed to consider an alternative form of governance. It's simply the statute that Andy referred to says if the state board approves a withdrawal, then the former district shall be reconstituted. It doesn't get into an alternative form of governance and so on. So there's multiple statutes that may apply, and this is beyond my expertise. So there's a little background.
And I think, Steve, to your question, under what statute does provide us is the requirement that all towns must provide the education for their students pre-K through 12. And in the event, where a town does not, or a community does not have a secondary institution, I mean, part of the result of Act 46 was to join these and identify, consolidated school districts. But in the event a community does not have a secondary school, they are required to pay tuition for those students to a secondary institution of that child's choice, if the town has not designated one, or an approved independent school. What has changed in the last couple of years through the Supreme Court at the federal level is that money can be applied towards parochial schools if they are, as long as they, attest that the money is not going to be going to direct religious studies. And so that's something that is changed in the last few years. But under the tuitioning aspect of things, that's where the money would be going. It just creates a degree of volatility at the high school in terms of long-term planning and at BUHS, and some of the challenges and difficulties therein because of that. Once that choice aspect is open, it's hard to bring that back in.
Any other questions or comments? Sean, again, okay, Sean, and then Michael Becker. Anyone else want to speak up? Please raise your hand. Ann Ryder, in that order. Sean, Michael Becker, Ann Ryder.
Okay, if I could, I'd just like to say, as you know, I'm Sean Murphy on the Heinsberg Road, by the way. Many of you know that I was the director from the town of Guilford to the District 6 board. So my job was to make a presentation to that board about the importance of secondary education for students from the town of Guilford. And I did it for many years. It was actually a pretty enjoyable process. And I was thinking ahead, if we did not have, if we no longer have the WSESD, then we would lose all representation within the high school. So the Guilford students go pre-K to 6 at Guilford. So that's 7 years. Then they go from 7 to 12 at the high school. So that would mean that the town of Guilford would have no say, no representation whatsoever for secondary high school education. And I think that would be too bad. So I just wanted to point that out. Vernon, when they left, advocated their ability to have a say on the high school board. And I think it is a loss for the town. Also, you have no equity. We borrowed $54 million in 2003 to renovate the high school. And that equity would be no longer what we'd have any control over as far as saying what should happen, or sports programs, or whatever goes on. So that to me would be a loss. Thank you.
Okay, Michael Becker.
I'd just like to ask, I mean, for this to even be proposed during a pandemic seems very odd to me. I think the teachers, principals, staff, custodians, everyone, cafeteria, bus drivers, have their hands full. I'd just like you to speak, Andrew and Frank, as far as the amount of resources it would take to pursue this dissolution. I would have to think there would be a lot of meetings and a lot of stress involved, and I'd just like to know your thoughts on that.
Thank you, Michael. I think that it would be premature for me to identify what the stress that would be, and I can say that our administrators, teachers, custodial staff, paraprofessionals, school nurses, secretaries in our buildings have worked around the clock to make sure that schools are open and that they're open safely. Our principals did not take a day off over the summer. And in fact, I was persona non grata when I told them that they needed to take the December vacation off at the holiday time. because they're that committed to their schools and making sure that their schools are opening and operating safely. It really is a truly incredible group of people and individuals that are so committed to their students. It's awe-inspiring on a daily basis. I could think about, I can go down a rabbit hole that, I know that for a central office level, for instance, we were able to save some money on the supervisory union side because our auditing costs were less, and our business office is down an individual. We were able to reduce that because it went from 7 budgets to 3. The idea of recreating 4 more budget codes, looking at different things that have taken place is it's a big lift. I can say factually that there has been a significant amount of collaboration between all the elementary principals, whether it's sharing of thoughts, ideas. It goes so far also as to sharing personnel and sharing individuals between schools. There was the Guilford Vernon Putney collaborative online school is a entity that would have been difficult to form had it not been for the merged district. I can say that the principals meet regularly. We meet as a group weekly, and then they meet individually as a group. So to tackle what this might be, it injects a degree of volatility into their days. There's a question around staffing, and that will come up as well. And so right now, everyone in the 4 towns is an employee of the WSESD. That includes staff that's shared between elementary schools. We have some specials teachers in particular that may split between Dummerston and Guilford, or Putney and Dummerston, or Brattleboro and Guilford, or their shared staff. Those staff members would be relegated to working for the individual town districts. We would combine contracts and have 2 separate contracts. But when it comes to recruiting new staff or new personnel, we do have a number of retirements coming forward. That instability is a worry that I have around our ability, our capacity to attract and recruit staff for the long haul. I know that Guilford itself has a couple openings coming up, some long-time retirements that John is able to start searching for. We want to make sure that we create the conditions that are the best conditions to get the best people in front of our kids. And that is a worry that I would, candidly, I can say that I have about this, the vote that's taking place. I don't know, Frank, if you want to share anything else.
Sure. Just absolutely echo everything that Andy has just shared. And then in addition, the uncertainty that it creates is seriously problematic when it comes to future capital improvement projects, and many of them are not so future. They're like, they should happen this June. But after speaking with the Vermont Bond Bank and government banking representatives, they've made it clear that that if there is ambiguity in terms of what legal entity we are as of March 3rd, they're not going to be interested in making loans. And in fact, we had hoped to pursue a addition renovation project at the Academy School. It's been a long-standing issue around a modular building that's fully depreciated, and we need to accommodate kids in the main building. And those sorts of issues are on hold until this process is resolved. So as Andy have said, creates from an operational point of view a lot of uncertainty, and it's obviously unsettling for our 400 employees who may have a different employer, which requires a different benefits package, a retirement plan, all of these things that Andy was just saying around recruiting and retaining great people. These are not things that lend themselves to doing that. And personally, I've been very disappointed that this initiative has been forth by this board.
Thank you.
Okay, Maggie, you're up. Maggie Foley.
Hey, everybody. I just wanted to chime in and say that I see that no teachers are on tonight's call, and I'm glad to see that because it's February vacation. But if anyone hasn't seen it, I would encourage them to check out the letter from Guilford teachers signed by 24 of our staff and teachers who encourage people to vote no on these articles. In addition, I think Frank and Andy probably didn't say that this has also been a whole lot more work for them. I feel like I've seen both of you many evenings lately, so I know this is taking up a lot of your time, and I appreciate that time. And I appreciate all the time you've put in over the course of this year leading up to this issue. I think that already everyone at the district and at our school, we're putting in so much work to make the school safe for our children. And Andy, I've really valued your steady leadership through the pandemic that has kept our kids in school and our kids safe. And Frank, I've also valued the work that you did to get air quality improvement systems into Guilford. And as a Guilford parent, I felt much better sending my kid to school since those changes were made in December. So I want to thank you both for your time, because I know that this probably isn't ideal to be spending this evening with us, but I appreciate all the information that you've given to Guilford voters tonight. And I hope that those of you that are on this call will join me in voting no on both articles. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Maggie. Ann, you had your hand up, but now it's down. Are there any other comments or questions about Articles 10 and 11? Or any, Ann Ryder?
Hi, I would say this is, basically the reason I put my hand down is because Sean got at my question. We invested a huge amount in the high school. You know, we put a lot of tax dollars towards the $55 million improvement, and to walk away from that investment is kind of too bad. The other thing I want to say is completely unrelated to these articles, but I'm not sure when we're going to finish out. So I want to give a shout out to Leslie. This is amazing. This is a remarkable piece of work. And wow, not just the layout and the size, but the way she highlighted very important statistics, the number of photographs. Super job. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ann.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and if I can just echo that. I mean, we've been desperate for some graphic design in our town report, and we got it, and it looks terrific.
Rick, are we ready to adjourn, do you think?
Well, hold on, Richard, hold on. Let's see if there are any more comments or questions.
Oh,
I see.
there are.
Probably Don, or it might be Evelyn. Don McLean, or Evelyn McLean.
Okay. Hi, it's Evelyn. Can you see me?
Mhm.
I just wanted to say thank you to the select board for making the special effort to reduce our taxes this year by using reserve funds very cleverly. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions, comments? Last chance, people. Okay, I guess, hold on, oh, here we go. Sean, you've got your hand up, but Andy Burrows or Elise Burrows is ahead of, I mean, you've spoken a lot, so I want to let them go. Andy or Elise?
Just a quick question. And that is, there are two articles. What kind of mayhem is going to be caused if one of them passes and the other doesn't?
Well, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they both have to pass unanimously in all four towns for anything to change.
That's correct, Rick. Any town has the potential to block the entire move by voting no to the withdrawal. A town could elect not to withdraw, but then approve the withdrawal of others. It does create a bit of chaos that the State Board of Education would have to figure out. Ultimately, if Brattleboro, for instance, decided to withdraw from it, the state, and as the largest district, the State Board of Education would have to consider, is the WSESD viable, or would allow that to happen. But that's a great point. Thank you for raising it, that it does create a bit of chaos that has to get sorted out, and it may take until August or September to do that.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you, Andy. Any other comments? Okay, Sean Murphy.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that one thing that Andy was talking about a little bit was the stability of a district in, bringing new people on and retaining qualified staff. And I looked on the WSESD website and I noticed there are 41 positions that are now will have to be filled, in the near future. And I was thinking about instability in a system and how that would affect who you can actually recruit for these critical jobs. So it's sort of just building a little bit on what Andy mentioned. But I think once I realized that there are 41 openings in the WSESD, I thought we don't want chaos because we need excellent teachers, which we already have, but there are some people that are leaving for one reason or another. So I think that's a very important consideration. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, I guess we will close the meeting. I want to thank everybody for attending, and Andy Skarzinski and Frank Rucker for joining us and providing all that information, and for everyone who spoke. And as I said last week, it's a great town, and this town meeting is so important. And it's so important to vote. So get your votes in however you want to do it.
Thank you, everybody.